Hello, everybody, and happy Sunday. How are you? My name is Scott Pinyard. I am the head coach here at This Naked Mind, and I am live today, like I am most Sundays, almost every Sunday, talking about things that I hear about, talking about things that I see talked about in our programs and in our groups. Today, I want to talk to you about something. That I do hear a lot of. And so I'm going to get to it in just a second. But that thing is responsibility. And I want to encourage you while I am talking. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me what's going on with you. Tell me how many days you're at. Tell me where you're stuck. Tell me questions you have. I wish I could do this every week in a way where we could actually talk to each other, back and forth. But since I can't do that, the best I can do is get your comments. So tell me your comments. Tell me what you think about what I'm saying. Before I get into my thoughts on responsibility, I want to give you something. One of the things that we hear a lot about, and people talk about this idea of like, oh, I really want to change my relationship with alcohol, but I'm not fully sure how. I'm not fully sure exactly what the right step is for me to take to do that. I have an offer for you. I have something that can help you figure that out. And that thing is this: the live alcohol experiment. So we have our November live alcohol experiment is open right now. It is ready if you are. And the live alcohol experiment is an incredible program. It's completely non-committal. We're not going to tell you, all right, now never drink again, right? This is going to all be about, hey, Baton, how are you? Good to see you. This is going to be all about curiosity, right? Curiosity where you can take 30-day break from the alcohol and just see what happens, right? Just see, what is life like? So many people are curious about this, and being able to make this step can make a huge difference. And so we want to do that with you. We want to take this 30-day break with you and bring you through the live alcohol experiment. So the live alcohol experiment is daily content from Annie and I talking about how alcohol affects your mind and your emotions and your body and your life, right? Just getting real about what this is that we're doing. It's also 30 days of live coaching. We have some incredible coaches lined up. They're going to go live just like this every single day of the month, and they're going to answer your questions, right? They're going to talk about the content. They're going to be talking about how this can attend, how the information connects to their story, how might it connect to your story. They're going to answer your questions. It's an incredible experience. So whether you have done it before or you're looking at doing it again, oh, and by the way, it's only $47. It's an incredible amount of content and coaching for $47. So if that sounds good to you, please head on over to alcoholexperiment.com. You can get signed up there. It's incredible. So please go check that out. I have some people to say hello to, and then we're going to talk about responsibility. Diane, how's it going, Diane? Day 46. That's amazing, Diane. Congratulations to that. Lisa, hello, Lisa. Good to see you. Baton, third one for you, Baton. That's awesome. I'm excited to see you in there. Tracy Lee in New Zealand. Hello, hello. Alexandra in the UK. Hello to you. All right. I got to admit, this one kind of riles me up a little bit, so I'm going to ramble. But I want to talk about this idea of responsibility. So you've probably heard Annie or me or one of our coaches even maybe say it, right? And we'll say this thing that it's not where you're at with alcohol is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And I think we spend a lot of time talking about the fault thing, right? Because, we end up in a situation where we feel stuck and then we feel like, okay, this is my fault, right? I did this to myself, and one of the things that we do in the live alcohol experiment is great about this. Is you start peeling back the layers of let's really look at this fault thing, right? And we realize like, oh, we're raised in societies where alcohol is glorified, right? It's like this fancy thing that you do when you're older and everyone does it. And I mean, you literally can barely go to any sort of event that doesn't have alcohol, right? And so I think over time, we start to recognize, wait a minute, no, we have been in some ways maybe not told the full truth that alcohol is addictive to humans. And that's a full sentence. Alcohol is addictive to humans, right? And so I think it's something that people can uncover. They can get to the place of saying, oh, yeah, maybe this isn't my fault. And that's not the focus of this live. Actually, on this live, I want to talk about the second half of that sentence. It's not, but it is your responsibility. And it's kind of a harder concept, I think, because ultimately, what does this mean? It is my responsibility. Like, what does that mean? And I regularly see people beating themselves up about it, saying, I'm trying to take responsibility, so I'm not drinking, right? And they do this before they're ready, right? They do this before they've done the work to shift their thinking. And that, friends, like that can be damaging, right? And while the idea of responsibility is something that can feel empowering, what I see happen over and over and over is people saying, I'm taking responsibility, and then taking on too much, right? We take responsibility and we make responsibility only equal not drinking immediately. And when we do that, we set ourselves up to feel shame. And here's the thing, right? You guys have heard me talk about shame and blame. You'll hear Annie say, it's time to put down the weapons of shame and blame. Shame and blame come from our own thinking. So in this weird way, this saying that we'll sometimes say, right, that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. If we don't really clearly define what we mean by responsibility and what it means to take responsibility, we can get ourselves in a situation where we are creating more guilt, more shame, and more blame. And those are the things that can keep us stuck. So I want to give you a new idea of what it really means to take responsibility, right? Maybe it's that taking responsibility isn't to quit immediately. I know that might sound shocking and you're like, wait, what? And it's true, and I'm going to explain it, but maybe you've tried that before. Chances are it didn't work too well. I know that was the case for me, right? I know that the number of times that I wanted to take responsibility and just quit and I'm done, right? We've all been there, right? You wake up in the morning and you're like, I cannot believe I did or said that thing, or I can't believe I feel so bad. And like, that's it. I'm going to own this, right? But what if taking responsibility isn't just about what you drink, right? What if taking responsibility is bigger than just changing what you put in your glass, right? What if taking responsibility means changing the thoughts you think, changing what you put in your head, right? And what do I mean by that? Let's talk through it, right? Responsibility means that you are responsible for changing something. There is a situation in your life and you want to take responsibility for that situation. And so you want to change it. That is a process, right? That's not necessarily one action. I have a story for you about this. I'll tell you in a little bit, right? Anyone who feels stuck, though, knows what I'm talking about. We have this idea that, like, we want to change responsibility. We can have all this motivation. We can have this day where we're like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, right? I am motivated. I'm going to change it. And you can just feel like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to go. Yet, just a few hours later, it feels completely differently. And so what I want to suggest to you is that responsibility is not just about the behavior. It's about the way we think, right? Taking responsibility is about going inside. And by the way, this is true for anything that you want to change. I see the same thing. I see a ton of this when it comes to people wanting to lose weight. I see this when people want to change relationships. We have this idea that taking responsibility means this end result is what I'm responsible for. And we completely skip over all the pieces that go in between now and that future state. And when we do that, we feel like we quote unquote fail. And then we feel even more shame. Because, man, I'm not being responsible here. So I'm going to focus on drinking with this, but no matter what it is that you are trying to shift, you can take this and make it about whatever you want, right? So many of us try to force this behavior change, right? We'll take charge and dump out all of our alcohol. I have done this so many times. I'm going to guess you probably have too, right? Give away the beer, like I'm going to dump out the rest of this bottle of wine and we'll do this and it feels good. And we tell ourselves like, no more, right? That's it. And in the moment, it feels amazing. It feels like we can take responsibility, and maybe in a way that is true at the moment. Right? And that one moment we are dumping out the alcohol, we're not drinking it. And certainly from the outside, it looks like we're being responsible, right? The people around us who might have been saying for a while, like, hey, maybe you should slow down a bit, right? Maybe you need to take a break from alcohol. Well, they see this and they're like, wow, look at that, right? She's taking responsibility, right? She's getting rid of it. There's an issue with how this is done, though. And there's an issue that, again, any of you who have been on this roller coaster like me know all too well. That motivation that we're feeling when we stand at the sink, right? That emotion that we experience when we're, getting rid of alcohol, right? That is fleeting. The motivation changes over time, right? Reality sets in, and those of us who have tried it know what it feels like, right? We don't want the effects of alcohol in our life anymore, but we're stuck with a desire to drink. And so responsibility, and this idea of responsibility and just dumping out the booze, yes, definitely is the end result, but then we're stuck internally, right? We're stuck emotionally. We're stuck fighting with ourselves. We're stuck saying things to ourselves like, what's wrong with you? Can't you see what this is doing? And it's so funny because we talk a lot about how, other people can say hurtful things to us, but I promise you, and I bet money this is true on your journey, there is no one who can hurt you as much as you hurt yourself when it comes to the way that you talk about this. And so taking responsibility is way more than just pouring out the booze, right? So we decide to use willpower. We say, all right, we're going to pour out the booze. That's it. I'm motivated, right? And then willpower runs out. So then what do, right? We decide to tell ourselves that there's something wrong with us, that we're somehow inherently bad, right? We'll go to parties or we'll go out for dinner and we'll see people drinking and we'll still want to be there. That might not be responsibility, right? So while throwing out our booze might feel like it's taking responsibility, unless we have done the work to change our desire, right? Unless we have done the work to change our thoughts and feelings, we're not really being responsible. We're painting the picture of what a responsible person will do, right? We're going through the motions of what a responsible person will do. Because while you may be responsible to people in your life, I have a wife and kids. I'm responsible for them or to them for behaving in a certain way, right? I'm responsible to them, but I am also responsible to myself. You're not really being responsible if you just try to use willpower, and you've tried that so many times and it doesn't work and it just leads you to pain. And that might sound radical, right? You might be like, no, dude, like I am responsible to not drink, which is why I am dumping out my alcohol. And I get that. But go with me here for a second, right? No one makes us drink. And while it is not our fault, like I said at the top of this, that we are where we are with alcohol, no one holds us down and forces us to drink. And yes, peer pressure exists, but ultimately it's only our decision to grab for that beer or grab for that glass of wine. And so I ask you, like, are you really being responsible to yourself if you don't work on the thoughts and emotions that make you want to do that in the first place? Maybe responsibility means that we're responsible for the whole issue, not just the drinking part. Because anyone who's been in this knows, and you've heard us say this before, right? Humans run away from pain and toward pleasure. And for a long time, alcohol has been that way that we do that, right? It's the way that we escape pain or stress or anger or whatever emotion it might be. We had this idea that it was pleasurable to drink, and so we were doing that. But if we just eliminate the alcohol, how is that really being responsible if we're not working on those thoughts and beliefs that are causing the pain? The story I wanted to tell you is this. So I live in a neighborhood. Most of the homes in my part of the neighborhood were built in the 60s. And there's a lot of young families here. It's really great. My son's outside right now running around. I don't really know where he is. I'm assuming he's safe. No, he is safe. But it's this really it's this great neighborhood. But there was this one house down the street that was just falling down. I mean, trees growing out of the swimming pool, the roof is falling off. And about 4 months ago now, someone bought it and it was shocking to us. We're like, wow, that house actually sold. And they did a total gut renovation on it. And it's great. It's on the market now. I think it might be under contract. We're excited to see another family move into it. But there's one thing that happened that wasn't so great. All of the fox and mice that lived in that house now had to find somewhere else to go. And luckily for me, the fox have moved on. The mice, however, found a nice place to settle. First in my neighbor's house, and he got rid of them, and now of mine. Now, what does this have to do with responsibility? I will tell you, right? About a month ago, we started to notice, like, uh-oh, it looks like we have mice, right? We saw evidence of mice. And so I said to my wife, I will take care of this, right? I was me taking responsibility. And so what did I do? Right? I put out traps. Great. I put out traps. Problem solved, right? No, not at all. Right? I had to figure out where to put out those traps. I had to put out traps and see whether or not they actually worked. And if they didn't work, I had to find another place to do it. And if the traps didn't work, I had to find another type of trap. Right? That's what taking responsibility means. It doesn't mean to just put the trap there and then it's done and then that's it. Right? That's what I'm trying to say. Right? I am not saying that, the end goal isn't taking responsibility. Because yes, the end goal for me is getting rid of those mice. The end goal for me is no longer having to store all of our food in plastic boxes because there's mice everywhere and we don't want to deal with it. And maybe it's calling an exterminator. But either way, the point is I have to learn about what the mice are doing, right? I have to figure out where they are. And yeah, it feels good to put out the traps, but that's only because I'm imagining that it will work, right? And the same thing is true with pouring out your booze. The same thing is true with drawing a line in the sand and saying, that is it, right? No more, right? Taking responsibility doesn't mean beating ourselves up, and it doesn't mean dumping out your alcohol when you haven't done the work. Taking responsibility is about tending to those things inside of us that make us want to drink in the first place. Right? Taking responsibility is about taking responsibility for the desire to drink. It's taking responsibility for those things we're trying to run away from. And I know that sounds scary, but the reality is that no matter how motivated we might feel when we're standing at the sink doing this, I'm going to guess that there's a little part in the back of your brain, and I know there was for me too. I've done this multiple times where I'm like, I am owning this. I'm taking responsibility. And while I was pouring that wine out, part of me was like, is this really going to work? Right? Like I had doubts. I wasn't sure, but I didn't know what else to do. So yeah, maybe taking responsibility doesn't mean pouring out all your alcohol today. Maybe taking responsibility means taking the time to look inside. Right? Maybe taking responsibility is thinking about, wait, not the end result I want, but what is the next thing that I can do to get closer to that? With my mouse traps, I had some success and then suddenly I didn't. And I didn't know what to do. And so, I put bait out in different places and I tried different things and I had to find the other places that they were going, right? The other routes that they were taking. That's an intermediary step, right? Is figuring out, like, what is this process? What is the next thing for me to do? Because yes, it'd be great for me to snap my fingers and not have these mice in my house anymore, but that ain't how it works. So when you think of responsibility, maybe you can reframe responsibility to mean doing things like watching this video, right? Or buying a book, or joining the live alcohol experiment, or joining the path, or whatever it might be for you. Taking responsibility means taking that next step toward that thing you're trying to own. And that's what we mean, right? When we say that it's not your fault, it's your responsibility to take that next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, and then eventually you get there. But you own that entire journey, right? We don't just start at the end. There's nothing that works like this. I don't know. I get it, but like looking at it now, I'm like, why did I ever think that taking responsibility meant dumping that out? It doesn't make sense to me now, because I understand that there were ways that I thought, there were beliefs that I had, there were emotions that I was experiencing that were standing in my way, right? That were between me and this goal. And my idea was like, I'm going to vault all over all of those and I'm not going to deal with those. And I'm just going to skip to the end result. So what I want to suggest to you is that that's not how things work. And maybe if you were feeling this way, that maybe if you're honest with yourself and you're like, I want to take responsibility, maybe that the ultimate person that you're responsible to is you. It's not anyone else. And if you're responsible to you, then it's not just about the alcohol, right? It's about the way you feel. It's about the way you think. No one expects you to jump all the way to the end. Is it fair for you to expect that of yourself? So if you are feeling today like, I have to take responsibility for this, good for you. Like, that is incredibly awesome. But instead of jumping all the way to the end, ask yourself this question. What can I do today that gets me closer? Right? Two very important words there. Today and closer. What can I do today? What can I do right now that is going to get me closer to my goal? Not what can I eventually do that will get me there, right? But what can I do right now? That's one step. Watching this video is one of those things, right? Reading a book, signing up for a course, getting present to how alcohol affects you in your life. All of those things are steps that you can take. And when you do that, you take responsibility for the process, not the end result. That is something anyone can do, right? That is something that doesn't require willpower. That is something that requires vulnerability and able to go inside and able to connect with what's going on with you. And chances are, I know this was the case for me, and maybe it's been a while since you've connected in that way. You know, maybe it's been a while since you've really been like, I wonder what those emotions are. But expecting yourself to go all the way to the end and dump out that booze tonight, maybe that's not the right move. And I know that that's counterintuitive, and I know that there's people out there who are going to vehemently disagree with me, but I can tell you that we have worked with hundreds of thousands of people. And we have seen people try all types of things, and it is always comes back to the internal work, to taking responsibility for the process, and eventually getting the end result that makes a difference. I have some comments here that I'm not keeping up on. I apologize for that. I told you I get revved up about this. Let's see. Lisa says the LAE is awesome. I totally agree with that. It's really great. Lisa Jackson, 21 days in the USA. That's awesome. Lisa, congratulations on that. Teresa in Nebraska. How's it going, Teresa? Hannah, hello to you. Hello, Kathy. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, here's what I'm trying to say, guys, right? If you say to yourself, I am taking responsibility, I want you to think about that responsibility as a responsibility to your whole self, to the way that you think, to the way that you feel, right? To what is going on with you that is actually making you feel like reaching for a drink. Because maybe taking responsibility is about addressing those things. Maybe it's not just about addressing the behavior. Maybe it's not about beating yourself up and using willpower. Maybe it's taking responsibility for the beliefs that you have, that drinking is actually helping you, right? And believe me, you do have those beliefs, even if they're not clear. And we talk about this a lot in our programs, right? Maybe it's about taking responsibility for tending to some of the things that are inside that might be hurting, that might be contributing to this. And yeah, that might mean that tonight you don't dump out the wine, but you know what does happen? When you focus on those things, you get one step closer. You get one day closer. Hey, Jennifer from Michigan. I'm glad you like the experiment, Jennifer. You get one day closer. You get one thought closer. And that's taking responsibility. That's taking ownership of your process. And when you do this, you will ultimately find a path. You will ultimately find what that next right step is. And it doesn't have to be immediately dumping out your alcohol. Maybe you're finding, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I experience a lot of stress. Maybe it's, man, I don't know how to have fun without alcohol. Maybe it's that I'm afraid. right? Maybe I'm afraid of what my life's going to be like and what things are going to be for me if I quit drinking. But you will find a path, and that path will lead you where you want to go. But maybe it won't be today. Maybe it won't be tomorrow. Maybe it won't be next week, but you'll get there. But the way that you ultimately take responsibility is taking responsibility for all parts of this, not just the alcohol. Taking responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions, right? Engaging with material around this, engaging with a group around this. And I personally don't care, like whatever works for you, right? Like maybe it is doing the live alcohol experiment. Maybe it's not, right? There's lots of options out there, right? Whatever that thing is, you can take responsibility for the journey. You can take responsibility for the process. And yes, in taking responsibility for the journey and taking responsibility for the process, you have an end goal, but it all comes from doing the very next thing. You can't jump to the end. And when you try to jump to the end, as good as it might feel in the moment, and again, I know we've all been here, it ultimately doesn't work. So what I want to encourage you to do today is take responsibility, but take full responsibility. Take responsibility for long-term in those actions, but also take responsibility for how you feel inside. Take responsibility for the fact that maybe there still is some desire to drink there. Get curious about that. Dig into that. Work on that, because it's that you can take responsibility for that will eventually get you to the place where alcohol becomes small and irrelevant in your life. So I hope all of this makes sense. And I know that I went on a bit of a circular route here, but the reality is where you are with alcohol is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And it's not about just the alcohol. It's about you. So what if you can take responsibility for you in the same way that you would take responsibility for a loved one or a kid that wasn't feeling good? What if you could take that sort of responsibility? I mean, if my son starts crying, I don't just, I don't just say, stop crying, right? I try to find out what's wrong, and I try to help him work his way through thinking through it. You can do that same thing for yourself. So this is not your fault. It is not. And I will defend that idea, but it is your responsibility. But it's you that's your responsibility. It's all of you, not just your drinking. So I hope all of that makes sense. Katie says, this really resonates from Scotland. Good, Katie. I'm glad. Mary is on day 48. Mary, that is incredible. I think so differently after the live alcohol experiment. That is exactly what I like to hear. So everyone, thank you for hanging out with me. Tell me what you thought about this idea. I really do want to know, how does it make you feel to think of responsibility, not just responsibility to put down the alcohol, but responsibility for ourselves as humans, to do the work to get to the place where putting down the alcohol is not this willpower struggle that so many of us are used to. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And as a reminder, if you are curious about this, if you are curious about why Mary Kay says that she thinks so differently after the live alcohol experiment, you can join us. You can join us. The link is in the description. The live alcohol experiment is a 30-day live program. We've got an incredible community. We have some amazing coaches who go live every single day and talk about stuff just like I'm talking about this. I'm the captain of my ship. I like that baton. So great. Check out the live alcohol experiment. It is the content and the coaching and the community that can make such a difference in your journey. I appreciate all of you spending so much time and watching me today. I hope that this was helpful for you, and I really hope to see you in the live alcohol experiment. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next week.